Hey, what's up, guys? Well, here I am finding a rare opportunity to make a video in the space room, and I have just uncovered some more of my figures that I bought around the same time period. It's like a 2-year period. Here's Elena of Avalar characters. I think Mateo is that little guy. The little guy right here, yeah, that's Mateo that I was talking about. And he's like, I guess the closest thing to Cedric on Elena. And I'm really wishing I could have my money back, or at least have a garage sale with a lot of those characters. You know, because I feel like, yeah, I bought all those things, thinking it would get me as interested in that series as I was in Sophia, but it just didn't work. Because, as always, I become very laser guided in my obsessions. Can't really branch out too much. Though I've been obsessed with a variety of things, but it doesn't usually branch out that far. So anyway, what I want to talk about in this video, probably be shorter than last, is how my interpretation is not wrong on any of this stuff. I mean, that's what I was basically told. Well, I can't help your interpretation of it, but it's wrong. Well, it isn't wrong. My interpretation is not wrong on any of this stuff. And it's like, even if there were no evidence whatsoever to believe any of this stuff, which, I really wish I could find it within me to just go to a charity and just dump off a lot of this crap, because it's really not doing me any good. It's just a bunch of bad memories. A lot of it. But my interpretation is not wrong. Even if I had no justification to believe what I do, aside from the fact that people occasionally crap their pants when they get scared, even if that were the only justification around what I believe, it would not be wrong. You know what I'm saying? If I believed that they all shot their pants just because they all got scared, I would be justified in believing it based on that alone. But I happen to know that it is a very similar concept. Is almost the exact same concept. It's identical in nature. It's young idiots not wanting to believe or accept that objects resist changes in velocity. And so, like in Sophia the First, when they were flying in the flying coach. Okay, so when your body has been up in the air, and then you land too hard, you come down too abruptly. Like, you're supposed to land slowly, which is how roller coasters are built, so that you come down but not too quickly. And your body has to gradually readjust to being on the ground after being in the air for that long. Well, when Sophia landed too hard, what happens is, so your stomach is used to being up in the air, and so you land too hard, and the food is forced up through your esophagus. And so same thing with the flying machine chasing after the griffin. Why my chapters aren't working on my videos, I'm not exactly sure. But the fact that he was up flying around and then he suddenly kind of came down. And also the other thing, I mean, there's several things that can cause vomiting. Could be illness, could be motion sickness, anxiety, or disgust. All those things, at least those things, can cause you to vomit. And all of the above could be the case with him. Chasing after the griffin, I mean, that would cause you anxiety, knowing you still haven't gotten the amulet after all you've done to chase him. And, disgust because he just hit his head on a dusty chandelier, probably got dust in his mouth, and that may have grossed him out to the point of vomiting. a little bit. But, it's like my interpretation isn't wrong. Um, and so it's the same concept. Okay, so he's coming down from being up in the air, and that causes him to vomit because the food is forced up from his stomach to his esophagus. Obviously, this changes in velocity. And the contents of your stomach are objects, food, and liquid. Okay, so if your body lands faster than the contents of your stomach, well, guess what happens? As I've stated before, the food is forced upward as you land, as you decrease altitude. Well, the opposite could be the case as you increase altitude, wherein you could throw up because it is a change in velocity. But guess what? As you go up in the air, if you have something in your rectum, you could do the opposite of vomit. Like if you have diarrhea. And that's exactly the deal with the submarine with Angelica. She was being pulled up after her body had been used to being underwater. And so it's like you gradually get pulled up. Well, that can cause your stomach to cramp, make you have to poo. And if you have diarrhea, you haven't gone in however long they've been on the island, well, guess what? So it's the same concept that these young idiots don't want to accept, because they can't stand the thought of their favorite character being debased in the way that I am thrilled by them being debased or degraded or demoralized. And I'm just disappointed that you can't show more of it and make a bigger deal out of it, but there are certain limits in a cartoon. And so, it's the same concept that they won't accept. And I am not wrong in my interpretation. I'm absolutely not wrong, because as I stated before, it doesn't matter, you're not going to know either way. The only thing you're not officially shown is the pile of vomit or poop. Okay, so if I have no other reason than what I've just stated to believe what I do, then I still have the right to believe what I do. And no, I'm not trying to force it on anyone, So I'm not really creating these threads anywhere on 4chan and Reddit and all that. Or TV tropes. Or any of it. I'm not trying to force it on anyone. I just want it to be out there. And I have a right to believe it. And the other thing that people don't realize is sometimes there are certain things, when they cannot come out and say something, but they can have a symbolism that kind of tells you, if you know anything about figures of speech and symbolisms, if you have any adult brain cells in there to draw connections. And so with the Angelica thing, my mind draws a connection between the giant squid inking herself and Angelica doing what she did. That is symbolic. The giant squid and Angelica and the clouded leopard, that was foreshadowing. All that stuff, was symbolic together. Taken together, you see a symbolism. Well, the same thing with Cedric and the flying coach. Right before that scene, what does he see when he looks out at all these mountains and there are these fire-breathing dragons with plumes of smoke coming up into the air? They're breathing fire and smoke into the air. And so not only does that give him anxiety, it's also a symbolic thing. Because the fact that, think about a dragon, it breathes fire. So it's basically known for shooting something out of its mouth. And that is symbolic of what is going to be happening to him in a few seconds. And think about it, a sorcerer, as the legend goes, they can trace their lineage to a dragon. They're like part human, part dragon, which I think is silly. And so, the connection between sorcerers and dragons, if he's, his distant ancestor is a dragon, and he's seeing all these dragons shooting something out of their mouth that's fire, something really bad out of their mouth. Well, that's symbolic of what ends up happening to him. I hope you know how to land this thing. And the question is, why? What if I don't? And so, they find out what happens. And of course, I believe Sophia also did it. But as I've stated before, one character doing it doesn't disprove another character doing it. They're not mutually exclusive. In fact, it's all the better. Because the antagonist not only gets to be humiliated, they get to be likened to the protagonist that they thought inferior to themselves because of age or whatnot. And so, Tommy also doing it doesn't disprove it, makes it better. So anyway, and while he's vomiting, they show a horse. And that is symbolic because there's an expression, eat a horse or throw up a horse. It doesn't mean a horse, it means a large quantity. So yeah, there's a symbolic meaning that tells me that I am absolutely right about both of those things.